From Silicon Valley, the heart of startup land, it's Getting to Alpha, the show about creating innovative, compelling experiences that people love. And now, here's your host, game designer, entrepreneur, and startup coach, Amy Jo Kim.
John Linden is CEO of Mythical Games, creators of the pioneering NFT collectible game Blankos Block. John has a deep background in gaming, leading AAA titles like Call of Duty and helping develop the Millennium Falcon ride at Disneyland. Now, Blankos Block Party is a bold experiment in making a game that's both fun to play and takes advantage of NFTs. John is well aware that we're in the early days of blockchain gaming.
We also get a lot of, well, why are all the games not deep right now? Games take a while, especially if you're going to bring out a new IP and a lore and some real deep character development. So we're still in year 1, year 2 of mobile. And if you think about the games in year 1, year 2 of mobile, it wasn't Sims, right? It wasn't Supercell. It was Jellycar. It was Doodle Jump. And they were fun, but they were pretty primitive to what we now see in mobile 10 or 15 years later.
Join us as John explains the reasoning that led him to develop Blankos Block Party and what they're still learning about this new form of online gaming. Welcome, John, to the Game Thinking Academy. I'm so thrilled to have you here.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here as well.
You just got back from DICE, right?
I did, yeah. I did a talk at DICE. Min Kim, who's a great friend, he actually wanted to take on this whole role of NFTs directly, which is it's a little bit of a tough audience there. So it was interesting. So we had a couple people from the space. We had the representation from the investment community through Andreessen Horowitz. We had some people doing some innovative work around this crazy world of DAOs and lending and guilds and all that type of stuff. And then apparently we had me being the old guy from the industry that has seen both sides of it. So it went really well. It was really great to have a good talk about what's working and what's not working and what do we need to be doing as an industry thinking through these problems. So it was great. Yeah.
What were your personal big takeaways from it?
I think it's interesting. I think there's a lot of interesting innovation that can come from this whole new world. And I think that's one of the things I love to talk about, just some of the stuff that I think is really fascinating and why I like it. But I think there's a lot of thought around what the tech can do and what the tech should do. And I think that's a real key piece is that there's some talk about, well, eventually the game can be completely designed by the community. And I'm like, oh, I don't know about that. There's still a big art to art industry, right? It's if you had 1,000 people painting a painting, it's not going to be a Picasso. There's a reason it's a Picasso. There's a particular vision of a creator. So I think it was really going through some of those in terms of what is real, what can you do, and what should we do as an industry? So really, how do we empower this world? How do we bring stakeholders together? But also, how do we make sure we're still driving this amazing industry that we've been building for, decades now?
So we've been talking about this with a number of our guests, this exact issue. So pin that because we are definitely going to go deep. I think the whole centralization, decentralization, balancing thing is a rabbit hole that could easily take up our whole time. But as a community designer, it's obvious if you look at history that every viable society tends towards centralization.
Yep.
And we're already seeing that throughout crypto in reality, if you pull back the covers. So first, I want to really start with giving folks a sense of your background, because in the world of crypto NFT gaming, what you're doing is right on the cutting edge. Everybody's got their eyes on it. It's very exciting. One of our students did a teardown of Blankos.
Okay.
The bad and the ugly. Happy to share that with you.
I would love to see that.
So tell us at the high level, your background, particularly the pivot points in your career that got you to where you are now, because you have a storied career.
I have a weird career for sure. I've actually had kind of two sides of my career. So I started off really early. I started my first company. I was venture backed at 19 with, again, it dates me a little bit. I have the greatest show in here, but in 1997, 1998, I was venture backed in what we called it online communities at the time, but now we call it social media. But basically what I did is I created a website when I was in college around connecting friends and connecting classmates and things like that called Planet Alumni. And with venture back, we raised about $5 million early on. I wasn't 21 yet, which was interesting to not be able to go out for a drink, but we had a company growing. So that was kind of my first take. I really saw the early 1.0 of the web, right? We were a top media metrics 50 site in the world at the time, 1.5 million users back in 1997, 1998. we really struggled. We struggled to make money. There wasn't really an ad community yet and all that. So we kind of pivoted that company. We did two things. One was a public facing website called Planet Alumni, which was essentially a Facebook 7 years before Facebook came out. But then what we found is we started productizing that into a SaaS company and started licensing that tech directly to the universities. And we ended up selling the public side of the business to Richard Rosenblatt, who was later MySpace and those guys, and Jeff Tinsley, and they turned it into reunion.com. And then the private side's still around. It's still actually a company. They power 900 universities today. So it's nearly, God, it's going on 30 years of that company before too long, but they power 900 universities today. So that was kind of my first venture into the business world and into the tech world. And then after that, I got into a lot of ad tech. So I was a co-founder of a company called Ad Knowledge. So we called it lookalike marketing back in the day. It's now kind of behavioral marketing that we talk about now. So started thinking about problems around that. How are we asserting this new world? We grew that really quickly. Did another startup around click fraud validation. So we saw this whole new industry of pay-per-click and a lot of fraud. So we could solve some problems there. And then joined a company in LA called OpenX, which we did at one of the first called real-time bidding, these online ad exchanges of how do you basically have people bidding on every single ad in real time. And that was a great experience. That was the first half of my career. And then I went to take a break. I was burned out and I was going to take a year off, and I made it about a whole 6 weeks. And my wife's like, "You're driving me crazy at home. You need to go do something because you don't sit well at home." And honestly, Activision came calling, and they were looking for someone in particular that had entrepreneurial background, but also really understands some of these new worlds, cloud computing. We were one of the top partners of all of AWS at the time. I was on the customer board of AWS, mobile, second screen, all these crazy new things that were coming about. And they had this Call of Duty studio that was working on some of the more innovative new projects, and they wanted me to take over the studio. So I've been a lifelong gamer and jumped at the chance to get into the game industry. And honestly, haven't ever looked back. I just love this industry. I love the innovation. I love the opportunity. So I was Activision for about 5 years, mostly Call of Duty. So we worked on 4 Call of Duties as one of the studios on Call of Duty, and then switched over to the Skylanders franchise and did a small mobile game, which it was a very interesting time in mobile for Activision. So we hadn't really done much in mobile, had this game, and then ended up buying King right in the middle of this. And suddenly we had a massive mobile presence. And I wanted to go explore mobile more on my own. So I left there, started a mobile company for a couple of years. And so I joined forces with some other groups that we had been working with called Seismic Games. And we did a big game called Marvel Strike Force, which is a big mobile RPG, and which is now owned by Scopely. I think it went from Kabam to Aftershock to Fox next to Scopely now. So, or Disney, then Scopely. So it's changed hands a lot. But we did that game. And then basically we worked on a lot of other really fun projects there. We did a voice recognition version of Jeopardy that actually won an Emmy, which was cool. We were working on a Magic the Gathering game, which we sold the company before that game came out. We built the Millennium Falcon ride for Disneyland, which was awesome. So if you've been in the big Millennium Falcon at the new Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, we built that ride with Epic and Imagineering, and then sold that to Niantic. And that was basically when we sold to Niantic, I had this vision of Mythical, and then left the deal, didn't stay with the company, and started Mythical then in 2018.
So your entrepreneurial drive is really the through line here. And also,
yeah, I love it.
You're taking the edge.
Yes. And that really drives me, honestly. What's great too, it's really about taking these ideas and evolving with the industry, trying to stay ahead of it a little bit and see where things are going, see where the big shifts are happening, and they build on themselves. So we did this Battlecast game, and what's fun about it is these were physical trading cards you could buy at Toys R Us or whatever. But the real secret to these cards was there is a piece we actually patented at Activision. We printed 100 million cards that were all unique, and that each one has a slightly different pattern on there. And what we could do is we could use AR to kind of mask the process a little bit. So we had a character moving around, but we were using computer vision in 2014 to basically read that. And we could read that in 50 milliseconds and tell you exactly what that card was. And there's only one of them in the world. And we could transfer that to a secure digital asset. And that was really some of the basis. I became just so hooked around the idea of going from physical to digital and the idea of verified ownership. And what can you do with that? What does that mean to consumers? And that's really what sparked, same time, blockchains happening at the same time. That's how we can start piecing stuff together. It's like, wow, there's a very big transformational change about to happen.
So you left, you started Mythical with a vision. What was your initial keyword, your initial vision?
I think it was really two things. One, being in the game industry, there's a couple problems we saw. We saw gray markets. Consumers find value, right? They do. They just do. And I love that about consumers. They'll find value on their own. That's just the way we work as humans. And what they do is if you don't provide that, they'll find a way. So we saw all these problems with gray markets, people selling accounts on eBay, and Korean markets were popping up, trading digital assets. And the problem was the game developers hated it because they were shortcutting the economies. They weren't cut into it. There's fraud. So they're dealing with customer service. So there's a lot of problems we were seeing in that space. Simultaneously, we were seeing a new world kind of shift. And I think what we saw is we saw all these new stakeholders getting involved, esports and influencers and brands, and Marvel wanted to be in Call of Duty and all this stuff, but it was hard to really price the value of their contribution. So it was really those two concepts together that we started thinking about, what if we actually built this so that everybody's in on it? We bring this world together. And I think that's really where we ended up, is we started looking at a macro picture and we said, you know what, there's been two major shifts, I thought, in gaming over the last, besides just beautiful, amazing worlds people have built and the talent is there's been two transformational shifts I think we saw. One was this democratization of game access, free to play. So free to play came out and we suddenly saw this explosion of users in our industry from 100 million to 3 billion now, probably going to 4 billion soon, because we eliminated this kind of premium price point and suddenly we had a new world of demographics playing these games. So that was huge for us. The second one for us was looking at content. So we saw this kind of democratization of content to where now things like Roblox and Minecraft and Sims, which, all these amazing games, people were creating content. And now we had this world where more content was being produced than one studio could ever do by themselves. And that I thought was very transformational, because what happened was a lot of content, new economies starting to form, and so many new stakeholders that are very pivotal to the industry, right? So that was the second shift. And we really think the third shift is going to come, and not for every game, but for a lot of economies, and I think it'll be different from every game, is the democratization of the game economies themselves. How do we bring these stakeholders, whether your game is focused on esports or your game is focused on influencers for growth or brands or UGC or players or artists or whatever, how do you bring these stakeholders into these massive virtual worlds? And that's really, we think, is going to be the next transformational shift. And that was what we wanted to tackle as Mythical.
Let's talk about how Blankos Block Party came to life, how you got there. I believe in another interview you mentioned it started as a demo.
It was really a proof of concept. Yeah. So the story there was a couple things. One is we said, okay, we are seeing some blockchain stuff happen. And that was the other thing that did happen at the time, is as a free to play game maker, I'll spend $30 or $40 in a game, sometimes just to support the studio, sometimes to see how it works, sometimes because I decide there's a little loop that I like in there. But I was never a whale. I didn't have that personality. But we obviously love the whales. That's what made up our economies, right? And next thing I saw these crypto kitties, 2D images of cats. And next thing I know, I dropped $600 on these cats. And I'm like, what just happened here? That's not my normal behaviors. And I think what was interesting there is we were like, okay, there's something really fundamentally interesting if you give an item that feels tangible. I can destroy my cats. I could trade them. I could sell them. I could, breed them for something new. But I had that power as a consumer. So we loved a lot of these things happening in blockchain, but the games weren't great. They weren't game makers that were building these products. So we wanted to come out and say, okay, if we're going to do this, let's put out something that feels like a game first. We wanted something that people could just play. And could we bring these concepts of blockchain into a world that is still a game first and foremost? So we wanted to do a demo. And the idea behind the demo was we went through a bunch of Jamie Jackson, who's my co-founder. He's a huge vinyl toy geek, and I am too. And let's go after vinyl toys, because if you think about it, what vinyl toy community does in real life is what we want to do in a digital world, to where you have this canvas, right? You have a 3D canvas, and a lot of times it's blank. And that's where Blankos came from. It is a blank canvas that artists or brands or any person could come in and hopefully build their own and then resell that to somebody else. So that was the genesis of this idea. And we just started running with it, and people love the art. We sucked them into this amazing world. And that was what we wanted to do. So it started off as a proof of concept. And we were like, you know what? There's actually more gameplay here we can add on to it.
Kind of reminds me structurally of Nintendo Land.
A little bit. Yeah. There's definitely, we took a lot of inspirations.
Yeah, talk to me about the inspirations. By the way, this story is fire. There's so much good stuff in it. Like, just your thinking around, what could we make that's very skinnable and brandable? Just think that up front. That's the way game makers think.
Yeah, we wanted to think through a lot of challenges, right? We wanted also something very brand safe. I come from the Call of Duty world, which is not super brand safe necessarily. That's a very specific genre of game. We wanted stuff, so we didn't want killing, but we wanted to have some mechanics around esports, right? Okay, we want people to build shooters or build race games or build eventually, hopefully, sports games and other things like that. And so we thought through a lot of Roblox that they're doing. We wanted to age it up a little bit. So we wanted to put it into a world that, because we didn't think that was the right demographic for what we were trying to do. So we wanted to age it up to more of a collector audience. And then we wanted to save the space. That was the original things there. We also wanted a really fun, fairly high fidelity. I wouldn't say we're the highest fidelity game, but we wanted something that felt good. It's something you could even have on a console or something like that. So that was some of the ideas. We took definitely some cues from like Little Big Planet. That was definitely some cues there. Fall Guys came out actually after we were in the mix there, but there was definitely a little bit of inspiration of what Fall Guys was doing at Mediasonic and those guys. So there's we pulled a lot of different ideas there, but we wanted to keep it true to hopefully a game. And we wanted these characters also to be able to sit on a shelf with Funko Pops or with Kid Robot and still stand out. And I think we did a pretty good job of keeping a very distinct silhouette that is uniquely Blankos. But we definitely drew a lot of inspiration from a lot of different pieces.
My head is spinning with so many questions I want to ask. But while we're on this topic, I'm going to throw in one of the questions that came in from our community because it's such a good one. Okay. So one of the decisions that you've made, and obviously this is a moving target, right? You're not done.
Yeah.
But one of the interesting decisions in Blankos is the way that you present yourself. And so people have their username, but they have a collection of these Blankos and you can level them up. You can customize them. Customization is a huge part of it. So if you're running around, say in the arena, the main lobby, classic game structure, main lobby with small group games that you can spin off and go to else. So you're in the main lobby. If you run into someone you saw yesterday or a week ago, it's hard to recognize them because visually there's not an emphasis on consistency. It's really just play this character, play that character. So there's an interesting tension between persistent identity and the structure of look like and be whoever you want. The same tension, by the way, of course, runs through crypto. But I know you must have thought about this.
We did some tests on it too. And I think what we found also, honestly, what was really interesting about Blankos is we had a very early, powerful community and the identity for the community was their username. It's Chavio. It's these people, these groups that are out there we felt like there was a very strong tie to who the player was. And it was really about them showing off their collection. So we didn't want to base it on, hey, I have one character I'm going to go through the whole game with. We wanted to really think about a collection. And I think what we've seen a lot of it is we've really kept people with their identities, right? Their Twitch names and their gamer tags and all that. And so it's actually worked fairly well for us. We had a friend system very early. People could find each other, but we really wanted it to be about the username first. And then it's really whatever you feel like today. It's almost like dressing up for the day. What do I feel like today? What do I want to play as today? And I think that was really the idea. I collect a lot of these characters and there's not two that are alike necessarily. And I think that's beautiful about these collections is that I can express a lot of different things. I might have a particular artist I like, my particular brand I like. Maybe it's just the cool design I like, but we wanted to give people a lot of opportunity and express who they are at the time. And we're seeing that. We see seasonal ones. You'll see in the Halloween time, a lot of people are going to switch to the Halloween characters because that's where their mind's at right now. And we think that's great. And I think also the other fun thing too, is just seeing the drill with Sims and all this type of stuff, like just having that collection and having all these pieces, you can piece it together. And we were seeing some really fun ones. We saw a robot yesterday with bunny ears because we just sold bunny ears now. And it's constantly evolving and it's kind of nice because the world continuously shifts. Suddenly, like I said, around the seasonal times, it'll suddenly change to a holiday theme or it'll change to right now, the year of the tigers. We have a lot of tiger stuff and anime emotes that are based on that. And they keep coming back. They're cyclical, which we like. So yeah, it is interesting. There's good and bad there. I think we could have probably branded it a different way, but we felt that was the right direction for this particular.
That's a great explanation. Just summing up what you said, it's like gamer tag first. And there's other games, and that has some downside for some audiences, maybe the crossing the chasm thing. It's gamer tag first. It's I am my collection.
Yeah.
And it's a very coherent approach and no game.
There's some policing and stuff too. Obviously you have to be a little careful of. We tried to take out a lot of names. The funniest one is we had an event coming up and we were going to do a project with Deadmau5. So Deadmau5 is going to bring his traditional Deadmau5 into the game and all this. And we had one of our engineers, there's like, oh my God, guys, somebody's grabbed the username Deadmau5 and we're about to do this drop in 3 weeks. No, that's Deadmau5. It was actually him playing the game. And they're like, oh my God, that's actually Deadmau5. And then he went on Twitch and he was streaming as Deadmau5 and you should have seen people were flooding him in the game, which was good. Now it's good and bad. There's also a lot, especially for streamers. We've had Dream in the game, which he is one of the biggest streamers in the world right now. He joined the game. We've had Carl Jacobs join the game. We've had some amazing Captain Sparkles, who's a big Minecraft, and they play as their name. there is some challenges there because if Captain Sparkles is there, or if Ninja had been there back in the Fortnite heyday, everybody's going to try and kill him. So they're going to definitely grief him more. So that's been a little challenging with it. And we've had some people that'll play under a pseudonym when they're streaming or something like that, because it's a social experience and people just want to be near you, even if it's digital. And I think it's good and bad. So I think we've had to deal with a little of both.
So is Blankos still officially in beta?
It is. Yeah, it's been a long beta. We're taking a cue out of the Hearthstone playbook. Let's stay in beta until we hit $1 billion, and then maybe we'll take it out eventually. Now, honestly, the reason we did it is we're still learning. And that's the key about a game like this. Is that was really when we said proof of concept, we wanted to see those leverage. We wanted to see the data. We wanted to see the KPIs that come out of a game like this. And honestly, we've learned a lot. We've had to come up with some new KPIs because some of the things that we saw before are no longer there, right? They're different now. So I think things like that we've just had to deal with. So it's still embedded for a little bit longer.
Can you drill down on that for a minute? That's fascinating.
Yeah. So a couple things. What's interesting is retention, right? Mobile games, you live and die by retention. And generally what we saw, like in Marvel Strike Force, is if you're out, right? If you're no longer in D30, that is a very true telling KPI of that game. If you're out, you're never coming back. And that's what we've seen in mobile. We're not seeing that as these worlds. And what we're seeing now is that people play the game and then people are still part of the community. So they'll come back day 45 and they'll suddenly pick it up again and play for a little while. And then they'll leave for a while and come back. So we had to actually do two sets of retention metrics, because one is, what are you actually playing the day-to-day game? And that tells us obviously a lot of things. Here's the different loops we need to adjust. Here's the fallout. Are people getting stuck in certain areas? The traditional game metrics. We also have kind of this community retention. And what we'll see is that it's almost a 4X, to where we'll see 4 times as many people stay in the community and they'll come back for a new drop, or they'll come back and play with their friends again a little bit later. So we started seeing some stuff like that. So we had to watch kind of 2 sets of retention data to see, okay, cool, here's the actual game effects, but a lot of people just want to be in the community.
What do you mean by stay in the community? Is there a Discord?
We have a huge Discord group. We have a lot of people that track all these drops. These drops are almost like the supreme drops. People line up at 7 a.m. to get the new items, before they sell out or whatever. So there's a lot of people that come back. Here's the most amazing stat that I've seen, and I don't think this will stay with every game that's in this world, but we see 17% of all revenue for Blankos. They've never played the game once, not one time. And so what does that mean? It's 2 audiences, and we've kind of broken that down. One is there's a speculation audience, okay? We've seen that. Anytime you have a value and you think you could buy something for $10 and it'll be worth $25 down the road, people will come and collect. But people love the IP, and people are, and honestly, even they're not playing the game, they're interacting in the Discord, they're on Twitch, or they're on Twitter with us. They're in the marketplace. They're buying and selling items in the marketplace. They're trying to create these collections of IP. And to me, I love that. I love that. Obviously, it's great that we make more money, but it's mostly important because how many games can you fully monetize your IP outside of people playing the game? It doesn't happen super often. And I think that's going to be a tremendous opportunity for game developers. If you build a very intriguing IP that people connect with, you're going to be able to make money just for the love of the IP. And I think that's an important component. And imagine this right now in the mobile world, it is so competitive, right? A 1% difference from your CAC to LTV could be the difference in success or not in mobile free to play. You still get 17% more revenue coming in for your title. That gives you a lot of leverage on how you can compete and how you can market a game. So those are things that we've learned already, and it's really fun watching it happen.
So you said something so important that I want to loop it back to what we opened with, which is this decentralization is king idea. You said, and I quote, if you build really intriguing IP, it can draw people in and you can do more monetization with it. When you think about, if you trace back all the examples that you gave, John, when you talk about The Sims, look at even Roblox and Minecraft and what people have done with it. That wasn't just going from nothing to something wonderful. There was a core interesting game / platform.
That's right.
And then in Roblox's case, they built themselves many games. They built all the first ones to get the whole system started. It didn't just come from scratch. And so your insights about collectibles and crypto kitties and just the role of collectibles in gaming and what's going on now with Blankos is part of, I think, the excitement about what you might call collectibles first gaming. What does it mean to build intriguing IP? Do you have to have good characters and narrative? The Loot Project is the touchstone where a lot of people, including some of the folks at A16Z, are like, just items and a cool, mysterious vendor.
Yeah.
And magic will happen. And if you actually track that project, you can see how it's going. But there was so much belief and excitement around that. Of course, it was built around a hypey influencer, which is important.
Yep.
But that idea of just have a bunch of collectibles and magically a game will happen versus what you, John, know about gaming. Look at what you've worked on. So what does it mean to have an intriguing IP? And what is feel free to vent. But I want to know your opinion and your position, which of course you'll change if new data comes in. What's your opinion about what's like the minimum viable IP approach to have intriguing enough IP that you could build a game around? The Sims didn't come, the Sims community, the modding community didn't come out of nowhere.
It did not. It took a long time to build it up. And I think, so here's the thing I would say. We are very early in this world, right? There are some interesting data points right now. These little PFP projects, the Bored Apes obviously is probably the most notorious right now. There's something pretty magical about those worlds. They have a very fascinating community that has a high affinity to an art style or to a project. So let's give that credit. That's cool. That's happening. It's actually happening more than I would have ever thought. Now, the downside to that, does it have longevity? We don't know yet. My inclination, and probably yours as well, is that longevity is driven by game design.
Well, and value.
In our games, exactly. Utility, always things that we put into games. We think very long and hard of what are those loops and how do we keep people coming back and what is engaging and how do we measure that and make sure we're doing it right? Because we don't always get it. None of us get it right all the time. We get some of it right and you have to adjust. And so I think there's still, I love the Andreessens. Obviously they're one of our investors. I love their view on the space, but hey, throw out a cool IP and get an initial community and you got $1 billion company. I'm not sure I buy that yet because I think what you're going to see is a couple things happen. One, it'll be shiny object at the time. Some of them will stick. Some of them will be shiny object. Some of them are honestly an incentive for making money. So I view the world in terms of this whole play to earn. We're not calling it play and earn because I think there's two models here. There's the earn first models, which is like an Axie Infinity, it's great. And I don't want to throw shade at Axie Infinity. I think they're doing some very cool things. There's literally people in third world countries that are now being able to pay their bills because of video. That is very...
So that's what?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, sure. Yeah, when there's all different walks of life. And I think that's a new opportunity. It's like almost like the gig economy. It's what Uber did too. It's what delivery did. It's what customer service jobs did. It's a new form of work, which is cool. But to me, there's also a play first. And that's where we're really focused on is, can you bring these concepts into real games? So it has to be a game first. But here's what I love, Joe. I love that the further we get into this, we can take a lot of classic gaming tropes that we've seen in the past and gaming mechanics, and there's a new spin to that, right? Instead of designing for an inflationary economy like a free-to-play game, we're designing around scarcity. We're designing around these new, to me, it's a new paintbrush we have to play with. And I think there's a lot of other amazing benefits, right? You could build a community early. You can pre-sell items so you can get games off the ground. You have new revenue streams. You have new demographics. We could see a bigger world. But I still think that we like the play first model. That's what we're calling it, play and earn now, rather than play to earn, because play to earn usually just means it's a money model. It's a monetization model. And that's cool. That'll work for certain things. We also get a lot of, why are all the games not deep right now? Games take a while, especially if you're going to bring out a new IP and a lore and some real deep character development. That takes a lot. So we're still in year 1, year 2 of mobile. And if you think about the games in year 1, year 2 of mobile, it wasn't Sims, right? It wasn't Supercell. It was Jellycar. It was Doodle Jump. And they were fun, but they were pretty primitive to what we now see in mobile 10 or 15 years later. And I think that's the phase we're in right now. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. There's a lot of cool new experiments. I like to say a lot of these are academic still, because even if Axie is amazing, but it still feels like an academic experiment, right? There's $2 billion locked into that game economy. I guarantee you that's not from gamers. That's from investors. It's from people that are viewing this as a earning mechanism. And that's great. There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not what we're doing.
In fact, John, the teardown of Blankos that we did had 2 points of view, the play to earn point of view and the casual gamer point of view. And we did that because it's so critical to understand player motivation.
And I think the other thing we did on that game, which we've gotten a lot of shit for, to be super honest with you, is like, where's the token? Where's the token? How do I earn tokens and sell these tokens? And to me, this real again is better than I do. Is it is hard enough to balance a game with a stable virtual currency, let alone trying to do something that you're trying to balance against an externally fluctuating by the second currency. So we've actually stuck more with the NFT side right now and more around digital assets. And yes, you can earn new assets and there's free. You can earn a lot of these for free and sell them. And they're actually selling for real money, which is great. Because honestly, the other thing you can build in is it doesn't have to just be a quantity scarcity. There's a natural time scarcity built into items, right? One of the most popular things that ever Fortnite, when they sell, accounts sell kind of illegally on eBay, which I know Epic hates. The number one that sold on eBay, the reason is for the marshmallow skin, the DJ marshmallow skin that came out 3 years ago. Why do they sell that? Because you can't buy it anymore. So time-based scarcity is really important, I think, in digital assets as well. And I think that if you had the 1982 Zelda character, if you could still show you had that and how you got it and all, that would probably be valuable too right now as a digital asset. So I think, again, there's a lot of things happening here, but we've stayed very focused on let's bring the gaming world into this world. Let's not necessarily start over and try and create a new loop from scratch, because I think there's a lot of problems. And I'm happy to talk about some of the other problems too. But
that's such a good point. So I have 5 more questions I'm dying to ask you, but I'm going to start asking community questions. I don't know if you can answer this, John. It might be a question for your game designers about the merge model that you had. Do you know the merge?
Oh, yeah.
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 You can take 2 of your characters and merge them, get a higher level character. Or those, merge them and get the highest level character. That model.
Yep, exactly.
So Jenna's wondering why you did that rather than a character upgrade model. Was it inventory management? What were the drivers that led you to pick that for your system?
That's a great question. When I say it was a proof of concept, it's still a proof of concept. And this is one of the things we thought about. That model is a Pokemon evolution model. We didn't create that model. Here's what we want to do. We wanted to drive gameplay to see, can we use gameplay to drive value to a consumer? Can the only real way or the best way of getting through this is to drive gameplay, so you actually are earning from playing. And so the idea there was a couple things. One is we want to take an asset we sold. We weren't going to tell anybody that there's a gym rush. We just sold an asset. We sold it, and these are not huge. These were not like $1,000 items. These were $10 characters. We sold them for 30 days. They were not quantity limited. And we sold 12,000 of this character in, I think it was the month of September or something like that. So 12,000 characters, $10 a piece. Great. So we started off with that. And we wanted to say, okay, what if we had 2 evolutions like a Pokemon and they are fixed quantity, right? So now it's like, cool, there's 12 of these. And we say, we're going to have a fixed quantity of 2,000 and then a fixed quantity of 200. So now as a player, I have the opportunity to turn one of my 12,000 potentially into one of 200. But there's a couple twists to that. One, they're individually numbered. So the very first person that gets it's going to get number 1. And the second person is going to get number 2. What does that do on gameplay? What's the effect of that? And then the second one is we wanted to use some of these scarcity models to say, okay, cool. Okay. Well, as you move from a 1 of 12,000 into 1 of 2,000, we decided that you had to have 2 of them. And again, there's a little bit of a social experiment to see like what happens, because we did some data on it and said, okay, there was a small amount of number. I think if we had 2,000, there's only maybe 400 people that had 2 of them in their inventory, something like that. I don't quote me on that exactly on the numbers, but it was something like that. Like, okay, so it was like 20% of that next tier already had 2 of them in their inventory. So we announce it, you have to go find another one. And the only way you can get one is to buy it from another player, because we're not minting any more of these. We're not manufacturing any more of these as Mythical. So one, what happens? Well, you know what happened is the prices before, they were $10, and in the marketplace, they were selling for about 15, so about 50% markup. And this is before we announced it. The second we announced it, they started going for $30, $40, $50. So suddenly now it's, oh, that's interesting. So we suddenly saw this big markup of watching what would happen. And again, we are benefiting a little bit because we get a transaction fee off these sales, but we're not selling them for $50. Players are selling them for $50 to each other. And then what happened is we said, okay, when you upgrade, if you're going to get one of the 2,000, you have to burn both of them. So both of them are destroyed forever, which basically means now there's no longer 12,000 of the originals. There's now only, I think there's like 6,500 of the originals left after this experiment. And so what happened, we thought, okay, we've seen this game mechanic before. What happens if we put this scarcity of value? And again, it's all back to the players. So what ended up happening is before it was a $10 item originally, it was $15 item in the open economy. Now it's a $50, $60 item. The 1 of 2,000, I think they go for $400 or $500. Again, players are getting this, not us. And then the 1 of 200, I think they go for like $1,600 because there's only 200 of them in the entire world. So it was really interesting to watch, and players loved it. We had a lot of fun with it. We just announced it. We previewed there's going to be another one. We haven't shown off what it is yet. But it's really interesting to watch these mechanics happen, and players love it. There's game aspects, there's creating value. And again, we don't control the prices. We just see what the players value these at on their own. It's completely open. So it's fun. It's really interesting to watch these new mechanics.
Oh my gosh.
play out.
Sounds utterly fascinating. Adam asked a couple of good questions. The first is, who are your earliest super fans? What are the psychographics of your super fans, your early players?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And honestly, I'll talk about this Polystream. We acquired a company called Polystream in December, and I'll explain exactly why I did that. Two answers to this question. Who are the early fans? Some of them were blockchain people, just like, this is awesome. I can't, you're going to create real utility. We got a lot of, oh my God, these guys grow games, so this is going to be exciting. So there was a syndicate of that. There was a syndicate of vinyl toy creators, or vinyl toy fans. That was a big one, and a collector audience early on. But we did have a lot of early people that just love the concept. And that community is still like incredibly strong. I mean, like the early group that got in, they are diehard still to this day. And we're about to do a major update to the game next month, which is going to be exciting. And we have a big roadmap we're going to show pretty soon of what's happening. But like I said, that was the early group. It was a little bit of a mix, a little bit of collectors, a little bit of blockchain people, a little bit of, hey, I want to see some utility of where this could go. And then we've really built up a pretty strong gaming group behind it. So that was really exciting. The other thing we did see, though, is we've seen a big shift in the demographics of games, right? This is not your audience that's going to go download 100 gig to play Warzone on a $5,000 PC. This is an audience that wants to be in the 3D world. They want to transact in the 3D world. They want to socialize in a 3D world. And they come in and out. They come in, they go, they're not necessarily, a lot of times they want to play on a Chromebook. They want to play on a low-end PC. They want to play on a Mac. We had a big argument. I'm sure you've had this in the past too. You always have that Mac SKU argument in the main, let's say AAA game space. You're always like, do we do Mac? It's going to be like 50 people, because that's what we saw. We see a lot of people playing Mac because it's a different demographic. So that actually leads to the Polystream acquisition. Why do we buy this company called Polystream? Polystream has a very interesting streaming tech. So if you think of streaming tech, you always go to Google Stadia, right? Like Stadia or a Gaikai back in the day. This team was actually a former Gaikai team. And what they found on the streaming tech is there's a lot of promise of cloud stream games, right? Oh, I can build these crazy, awesome worlds in the cloud and everybody in the world can play it. You don't have to download anything. There's been some problems with that model, right? One, to render a game in the cloud, you have to have a GPU per concurrent player. So if I have 20,000 concurrent players, I need 20,000 GPUs in the cloud. So one, it's very expensive. And frankly, it's not super environmentally friendly, because you probably have a GPU in your local machine as well. It might have to be a super powerful GPU, but you have a GPU. So what these guys did at Polystream is they basically they're compressing draw call data out of the engine. So they take the engine like from Unreal or Unity or whatever, they look at the draw calls that are going to the GPU, compress that data, throw it to a local thin client that's maybe 5 megabytes, and then re-render that locally so it's pixel perfect. So the reason we bought that, though, is because of these shifting demographics. I'm seeing a shift, and we'll see more and more of this, just like we saw in free-to-play, that people want to come in and interact and transact in these 3D worlds, but they don't want to sit there for 4 hours to download a game. They don't want to have a high-end PC to do it. So we love this idea of Blankos now. We're doing a test right now. Blankos is a 5 gig download. In the new version on Polystream, it's a 5 megabyte download. And not only that, but once you download our client once, the next game that uses it, there's no download. It's instantaneous. So if you had a game that was using our same tech, and you've already installed Blankos, there's no download at all. It'll just pop up. So the reason we did that is I see a shift in demographics. I think people are going to want to be in these 3D worlds more and more. You hear about metaverse almost every minute, it seems like these days. And to me, there's going to be experiences that are these metaverse-like experiences, but they're going to be different than downloading an Unreal Engine game. They're going to want to have instantaneous access into these worlds. So that's what we're seeing. We're seeing a big shift in demographics. I know that's a very long answer. I'm sorry for that. But there's some really big things we're seeing right now that I'm just super excited about.
No, so you actually just answered one of the biggest critiques in the teardown. So that was great information. Thank you.
I talk about Polystream a lot now because I think the Polystream tech could be used for a lot of stuff. I hear everybody, I want to go watch a concert. Imagine this, like the Travis Scott concert in Fortnite. Awesome. Epic did a beautiful job, huge event, but you had to have Fortnite, and Fortnite's not a small project. Imagine eventually a world to where I want to go see the Travis Scott, concert, but I want to be in that world in 20 seconds. Or 15 seconds, or eventually instantaneous. That's when things start shifting for us. And so that's where I'm really excited where that tech.
Yep. Step by step. So we've got Ian and Amir and Adam has some follow-up questions. We're going to do a quick round here. Ian has several questions. Let me ask them. They're all around community. Is expressing oneself in a community a fundamental need for users? Is that why people are there expressing themselves in the community? What are your thoughts on that?
I think if you look at every game, there's a little bit of peacocking in every online presence because you're not there. It's a virtual representation of you at that second. That's what's beautiful about gaming worlds is it doesn't have to be exactly you. In fact, that wouldn't be probably as fun as if everybody was exactly themselves, which is one of the things I see a challenge with some of the things like Meta's doing. It's that's just me in a digital form. You want to be a dragon, you want to be a Viking, you want to be whatever you want to be in that world right now. And I think expression is really important for human behavior in general. So I think that's why games do well, right? It's an escape from reality, but it's still you. So it's underlying still your choice. So I love this. I love the idea eventually of having things portable, this composability of having things go back and forth, interoperability. There's a future for that. I think
and I would add one
think
thing, which I think you'll agree with, which is they have to care about and buy into the world to care about expressing themselves there.
Right.
Sometimes people want to have something
absolutely
analyzed. Like there has to be a need.
Exactly. And that you're selling a fantasy alternative reality for that moment in time. And right now it's probably Elden Ring for a lot of people. And like it's Horizon, it shifts of what's important to you, but it's always about expression. I want to be a dark elf and I want to look like this and I want to go get this set of things. So I think expression is just a key component.
Question from Ian. How are you thinking about product market fit? Do you feel pressure from your investors to open up and scale? How are you managing that tension?
That's a great question. Obviously, they want us to grow, but I think we're great, and I think we're a really interesting spot. And we've been super fortunate. Like I said, we've had a lot of things all happen at the right way, which is awesome, and the team growth and all that stuff. So we've had a lot of opportunities with the financial side of the world, and we've raised nearly $300 million, and we have most of that left. We're in a cool spot in terms of being able. We don't have a lot of those pressures right now. We really are. We have a big vision. There's a lot of stuff we haven't shared yet of where we really go. And I think to me, it's about expanding opportunities in the game industry. And it's a whole new segment I think that the game industry can control over time. And I think we're ultimately heading to a 3D internet down the road. That's what the metaverse, you want to talk about what the metaverse means. It's not Fortnite. It's not Roblox. It's a 3D internet. And I think we are heading there in some fashion. It won't necessarily replace everything, but there'll be a big aspect of that. And frankly, I think the best industry in the world to control a 3D internet and to build a 3D internet is a game industry. So I think we're heading into some cool stuff, but I think we got some opportunity to really, we're not getting a lot of pressure from our investors just because we are growing nicely. We've done 10X. We did 10X revenue over the year before. This year, we're most likely going to do 10X again over last year. So we're growing at a good pace and we don't have a lot of pressure and we can really explore some of these new concepts. And I don't know if everybody, unfortunately, is going to will get that opportunity. I think we are pretty blessed to have been where we are and the team we are and the efforts we've done to
money in the bank.
Luxury, I guess.
So another question from Adam. Do you think you might allow independent artists to design and sell Blankos?
Yeah, actually, we have a lot of independent artists right now. Most of our characters are independent artists and they get a cut of the primary sales and they get a cut of secondary sales for the perpetuity of the object. So they will always get those forever. We do have some internal groups as well that we brought in some artists because here's the thing. There's certain aspects of a game. You want to give away free items. You want to have it's not everything's for sale. And that's harder with an independent artist to be like, yeah, come and get your shit away for free. So we do have some internal artists that do just amazing work for our party passes and stuff like that. But most of our drops are third-party artists. They're building their own stuff and we don't give them feedback on it. We get a bunch of designs from them. We say, hey, we think these three will work, but it's 100% the naming. Also, we get that a lot. How do you name these characters? We don't name the characters. The artists name the characters, but that you'll see that they're the artist logos on it. Maybe the follow-up question there is, will we open it up to everyone? Love to. There's also chaos in that world, right? So I'd say right now, we try and do as many independent third-party artists as we can, but it is curated still because we think that's the right way to control the narrative a little bit is curation. So it's not full UGC. Do we see a world where it could be full UGC? Hopefully we can add more and more over time.
We have also Amir with a couple of questions. What are the biggest challenges you face with onboarding users into the crypto NFT world? And then follow up is, what do players feel about owning NFTs?
Awesome. So I would say that one of our big secret sauces of what we've been able to do and grow, and frankly, a lot of the reasons I think we're able to we're working with a lot of the first parties now. They're very open to working with us and trying to figure this out. And the reason for that is two things. One, we're from the industry, which helps. We've done games together. We've been at GDC together, right? The gaming industry is a relationship industry for sure. But more importantly is we've taken a stance on blockchain that there's 3 billion gamers in the world. They lose their passwords all the time. It's just a great trait that gamers have is they lose their passwords. But when they get their passwords reset, all their stuff is still there. In the world of Web3, if you're going to throw truly into Web3 from day one, your password is your private key, right? If you lose your private key, you've lost everything you've done. I think that could damage the gaming industry in a big way because it's not all about making money. It's about the experience and playing in these worlds. And so we think a lot about that. So what we've done is we actually have our own blockchain tech. We hold the private keys to your account right now. So we are in custody of those private keys. We get a lot of flack for that too, saying, well, you're not really web.
Who cares?
In that aspect, we're not. Exactly. But here's what we're doing, Joe, is we're like, okay, cool. Let's start with this. If you lose your password, we'll reset it and your stuff's still there. Next step, okay, now I want my Blanko on mainnet Ethereum or eventually on Solana or whatever. Awesome. So we now have a bridge. So I can take one item at a time and move it over to Ethereum. That's the next phase for us. It's giving players a little bit more freedom. Eventually, we'd like to go fully non-custodial. If you feel you're responsible and you've proven your education, sure, sign your own transactions, keep your own keys, do that all. We are heading that direction, but we're doing it with extreme caution because it could be a very negative experience. If I lost my key or my brother gave my key away or whatever, and I lost all my cars for the racing games I've been playing for the last 2 years, I'm probably going to have a really terrible experience as a consumer. So we're protecting gamers at all costs. So that's one thing in terms of onboarding. It's not really a heavy onboarding. It's like signing up for a video games, right? You get a key, you get a wallet automatically in our chain, and you can link an external wallet and try to transfer stuff out. It's a step process, but going into the game, and I think this is important, going into a game, you should just be in that world.
That's amazing. That answers another question that was coming up, which is how did you avoid all the wallet setup in your onboarding flow? Because it's amazing. Your onboarding flow, you never have to touch that stuff.
Yeah, you never have to touch that. It's tied to a game. And like I said, they're now, I don't know if you've seen in the marketplace now, I can go link my MetaMask account and I can transfer a Blanko over to OpenSea if I want, or I can transfer it to my wallet and I can sell it on OpenSea or Rarible or whatever marketplace is next. I can go do that. And so that's been the next phase for us. And like I said, we're working to where eventually, we'll give you your private keys and you can sign your own transactions, but we're not quite there yet. There's a lot of legality issues. There's a lot of things like Sony and Microsoft, which we've been on great talks with. They're like, no freaking way. There's other games that are like, no freaking way we want to do that. There's just the customer service and it's a disaster. So it is a balance and we have the tech to do that and we're experimenting and we'll keep experimenting. And our goal is to bridge the world. And I think we're going to be successful in doing that. And I think the studios like talking to us about this because they see that we're serious about protecting users and we're not just out to make money on this thing. This is a functionality first and a player's first.
I have to ask you, John, looking at your career, listening to you talk about what's happening now, giving us this glimpse into the future, you've really got a track record for moving toward very interesting trends. So what are this is a two-part question. What are the signals that make you get excited? What are the signals that made you get excited about blockchain and about free-to-play? And these new things? How can we look through your lens and see what you see? And then what's exciting to you that's coming out? That's the second part of the question.
I think for me, I don't know. This is maybe this haunts my mind all the time too. But I have a weird thing that I always things that problems in spaces bug the crap out of me. And a lot of times it's big stuff. Hey, Marvel wants to work with your game, but how do you price it? There's new trends happening with influencers and esports. Honestly, one of the things that drives me crazy that I've never understood is that the esports and influencer industry drives a lot of our business now, and they're not cut into the game in really any way. There's some creator codes for Epic, and there's some stuff like that, but they're a big part of our ecosystem, and they make money outside of the game. And I find that crazy. And honestly, the other thing is you talk to some of these big, now, 100 Thieves are fine. There's some FaZe Clan's fine. You talk to a lot of these esports companies, they are not making money. They're struggling to survive, yet they promote our games. So to me, things like that, those type of trends, I'm like, we can do better. We can cut them in. The first question we first started seeing this, we get this a lot too, is like, why would I want to share money with any other people? Like, I'm like, because it's an ecosystem play now. This is no longer just, I built a game, and this is no longer I'm a game developer and I have a game publisher and there's a consumer, right? We're not in that world anymore. We're now in a world of, and there's esports teams that are promoting and influencers need to be in here and brands want to get involved and artists and musicians want to get paid for their IP and players want to be entrepreneurial. That's the world we live in now. So we need to treat it like an ecosystem. And it almost over time, I know I'm never supposed to use a gambling term and I don't mean this in this way, but it's almost like a poker to where down the road, you could see a world where players are transacting 100% with players And we're just taking a rake in the middle for creating this world. And I think that's not a bad thing to think about. So I think the things I look for are big problems in our industry, trends and tech that could help solve it, but always keeping the players first. And I think that's so critical, is to keep it, don't go too far off the idea. It's like, I hear people all the time, we're building the metaverse. And I'm like, no, you're not. Like, if anybody says I'm building the metaverse, I think this is not there. Cause what you need to do is build towards that idealistic world, not just go from 0 to 100. Because one, you have innovator's dilemma. You're going to boil the ocean. You're not going to get anything done. Or it's really, we have a great industry. We have an amazing industry. People love our worlds. They love playing games and having fun. Let's not take that away. Let's enhance that experience. Let's not just take it away and make it a job. And so I think we have to convert from a gaming system into an ecosystem. And these are the things I think about nonstop, probably way too much, but these are things I love. And how do we do that? And how do you find the right people that can come build that with you?
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. By the way, we got a compliment on Blankos music here in the chat.
Oh, Mike McLafferty, he's formerly, I think he's on the DJ Hero team and the Guitar Hero team. So he's from a rhythm genre of group back at Activision back in the day. He is phenomenal. It's fun. We have some investors like the Chainsmokers and Christina Aguilera. We have some interesting kind of musician investors. And partly, AJ, what I think is fascinating about that is the music industry is really thinking about this and they want a bigger intersection with gaming. So yeah, it's fun. He's so good at what he does. It's a lot of fun. But yeah, he has really knocked it out of the park with the Blankos soundtrack. We actually had people ask to put it on Spotify.
Oh, that's
maybe we'll do it at some point.
It's
fun. It's a great recognition for this.
What's coming up that we should get excited about? Is there anything that you want to tease for us? Any links, URLs you want to send us to?
I don't know if I have a link or URL quite yet. If you go to Mythical Games, you'll suddenly see there's a games tab now, and you're going to start seeing some new stuff start to appear. So I think we're working with some amazing studios right now. There happens to be a car that's hitting right now, and you could probably only imagine where we're going with that. But again, I think what's interesting about Mythical and what we want to build as a company is we want to partner with studios that truly are creating utility around these new principles, not just tacking on and trying to sell them items. We want to think about people that take a racing genre or a sports genre or an RPG genre or whatever they're really good at. And how do we give them a tool set to build better experiences and better gameplay that can use these concepts of ownership? And if we can do that, I think we're winning. I'm very excited. We're going to be announcing probably 5 to 6 games soon of great studios around the world that are doing amazingly cool stuff and bringing new game design using this tech to enhance the game experience. And that's what I'm excited about. And we're going to see a lot of that happen. And I think what's great too, is the further I get into it, there's a lot of your games you've made in your past that I would love to have had the opportunity to put some of this tech into, because I think, the Sims content creation, I think that's such a cool experience. Like letting this world, imagine if Sims, like people could go do stuff. Honestly, there's metaverse type stuff right there alone, letting people design and create and be entrepreneurial in these worlds. Give them a tool set to do stuff like that. Now, probably not going to get the Sims right away. That's a ways off, I'm hearing, but we'll see what happens.
Thank you so much for joining us and spending all this time with us. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Awesome.
And for your great questions. And have a fabulous weekend, John.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thanks for having me. And thanks everybody listening in.
Thanks for listening to Getting to Alpha with Amy Jo Kim, the shows that help you innovate faster and smarter. Be sure to check out our website, gettingtoalpha.com. That's getting2alpha.com for more great resources and podcast episodes.